Hi, 7th grade. Happy Tuesday. Today we are going to be learning about sampling and populations, and how to take samples and then how to draw inferences from those samples. And you guys are going to get to participate in a fun group activity after this presentation. So make sure to watch the whole presentation, take notes, and then meet for the Zoom. And I'll put you in your breakout rooms, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. Okay, so to start off, we're going to go over some vocab, which I know it seems weird for math, because math isn't usually vocab, it's usually just numbers, right? Well, we are doing probability and statistics now, and there are a few vocab terms that are important to know just to have a foundational understanding of what you're doing, and how it kind of applies in the context of the world. This is going to be math that's you're going to be able to see used in the world, which is exciting. So our first term is statistics. What is that big fancy word, statistics? So it means the branch of math that deals with collecting, organizing, interpreting, and presenting data. So basically surveying, taking samples, and then what do we do with that? What does the data that we got mean? And that's what statistics is. So then a survey is a method of gathering information about a specific group of items or individuals. And you guys are going to be participating in your own surveys this week of your classmates. A population is going to be the entire group of items or individuals being studied. And then a sample is going to be a part of the population being studied. So we're going to look at examples of this just to kind of help you put this into a context. But basically the population is everyone that you could possibly sample, and the sample is the part that you actually are sampling. And it has to be, the sample that you take has to be representative of the population. It has to be large enough, it has to be, it just has to be representative. It has to be accurate to fit the rest of the population. So if your population was all pennies currently in circulation, your sample could be 1 penny from each 7th grade student. So your sample is going to be obviously smaller than your population, but it has to be representative of everyone. And we're going to figure out how we can do this. So to create a sample, it has to be unbiased, right? Which is also another big word. But you guys know what bias is. Even if you don't know the word, you've definitely seen it before. So an unbiased sample is a sample that is selected so that it is representative of the entire population. And important notes to remember here is that it has to be random and large enough to provide accurate data. So it has to be random. You can't pick who you're surveying exactly, because then that's not random and you are only getting data that you are expecting to get and are looking for. And then a biased sample is a sample drawn a way that one part of the population is favored over another. So a way that you could do this is by wording a question weird. So if you say, like, which flavor of ice cream do you like? Disgusting vanilla or delicious chocolate? That's obviously a biased sample, right? You are obviously favoring chocolate over vanilla, which you should if you're a normal person. And that is not, the person who's answering is not going to give you, probably not going to give you the most accurate response, right? Because they're not going to want to say disgusting vanilla. So that would be an example of a biased sample. Okay, so we're going to look at an example of this. A 7th grade homeroom was surveyed to determine how many texts students at Olean Intermediate Middle School send each day. So what would your population be here? Why don't you pause this for a second and just take a sec to think about what your population would be. Okay, so your population is going to be all the students in the middle school, right? You are surveying the 7th graders. You're gathering data from the 7th graders, but you are looking for data among the entire middle school, okay? So the population is the whole middle school, and the sample is just that specific 7th grade homeroom, okay? Now take a second and think about if this would be biased or unbiased, do you think? Okay, if you said biased, you are correct. It's only one class of 7th graders, right? And maybe some parents only give their kids phones in 8th grade. So it's inaccurate to survey just 7th grade or just one grade or even just one class because they might have completely different data than an entire grade does. So your surveys need to be representative and they need to be large enough so that it is representative of the entire population. Even if it's not surveying everyone, it still is representative of it. Another example. To track migration patterns of a particular species of birds, scientists randomly tag, release, and track 50 birds of that species. Okay, so take a second again and think about what the population would be here. Okay, so the population here would be the species of bird being studied. So I think it's a goose here. I'm not entirely sure, but it looks like maybe a goose. I don't know birds very well. But that would be your population, right? Every goose. Your sample then would be the 50 birds that the scientists tagged, right? Because that's where they're actually getting their data from. So take a second and think about if this would be biased or unbiased. And I would recommend you read the question again and look for those specific words that we hinted at before when we were going over what an unbiased and biased sample looked like. Okay, so we see the word randomly here, right? That word is key. To be an unbiased sample, it has to be random. And that's what this is. So it's unbiased because the birds that were tagged were randomly selected. And it's a pretty big sample of 50 birds. Okay, another example, we're going to go through and decide which is biased and unbiased. So you want to estimate the number of 7th grade students that walk home right after school in the springtime. Which sample is unbiased and then which samples are biased? So A, 3 7th grade students randomly selected in the hallway before homeroom. Okay, take a second and think about this one. Would it be biased or unbiased? Okay, if you said unbiased because you saw the word randomly, read the whole part again. So it only says 3 7th grade students, right? That's not a lot. That's only a couple. Out of the entire 7th grade, you're only surveying 3. So that's biased because the sample is too small. Because remember, to be an unbiased sample, it has to be random and it has to be large enough. Those are 2 very important criteria. Okay, B. 7th grade members of the modified track team. Do you think that's biased or unbiased? That's biased, right? They're already going to be staying after school because they have practice. And you're only taking from that one team. And you know they're already going to be there. For C, every 5th, 7th grader walking down the sidewalk after school. Would this be biased or unbiased? So it's pretty random, right? Because it's every 5th, 7th grader. But they're already walking home. So that would be an example of a biased survey because all of them are going to say that they walk home from school. And then the last one, every 5th student from an alphabetical list of the 7th graders. Do we think this would be biased or unbiased? And you can pause the video if you need more time to think about any of these. Okay, so this one would be unbiased, right? It's every 5th student, so it's random, and it's large enough because you're taking from the entire list of 7th graders, so it provides the most accurate and representative data. All right, so now we're going to talk about making inferences about a population. So, an example, there is a lake with trout, whitefish, and walleye in it. You want to make some inferences about the fish in the pond. In a random sample of 300 fish, there are 125 trout, 130 whitefish, and 45 walleye. Based on the sample, you could say that there are more trout and whitefish than walleye in the lake. There are about 1/3 as many walleye as trout or whitefish. So, why do we have to be careful about saying that whitefish is the most common fish? Because when you look at it, you see that whitefish is the largest number of fish, right? So you're immediately going to think, okay, whitefish is the most common. But take a second, pause the video, and really think about why it could be not correct to say that whitefish is the most common fish. So your sample is large enough, right? And it's a random sample. So it is a good unbiased sample. But if you look at the numbers, there are 130 whitefish and 125 trout. That's not a very large difference, right? 125 to 130. So it's not really accurate to say that there are more, that whitefish is the more common fish. Maybe trout swim closer to the bottom, so you couldn't reach them as much as whitefish, but there still might be more trout. So to get a more accurate sample, you would need to take an even larger sample of it. So yeah, only having the 5 fish difference is not necessarily implying that whitefish is the most common fish. Okay, so this is all today for notes. Next, what you guys are going to do is hop onto the Zoom, and I will put you into breakout rooms to discuss your activity that you're doing. It's going to be due Thursday night, and you're taking a sample of the class. So you guys are going to discuss a question to talk about and to just kind of use as a survey, and have some good options there that you think different sides would like. And then you're going to fill out the document that is on Google Classroom. So it has questions about making predictions and about your population and your survey and the inferences that you can make from them. So make sure to join our Zoom and then the document. And when you do join a Zoom, you are going to make a poll, a doodle poll. There's a video on Google Classroom with an entire tutorial showing you how to do it. It's super simple and really easy. And once you do that, you are going to paste the link to that in the Google Classroom. So just add it as a class comment, and then everyone please take everyone else's polls. Thanks so much, guys, and I will see you in the Zoom.